Last night, 7 Democratic presidential candidates took the stage for a heated debate in Los Angeles. It was the first debate since President Trump's impeachment and the last debate before the election year. But candidates turned on each other, and some of the biggest attacks were against Mayor Pete Buttigieg. A standout moment on the stage was when Senator Elizabeth Warren called him out over a recent high-dollar fundraiser.
We made the decision many years ago that rich people in smoke-filled rooms would not pick the next president of the United States. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
Mr. Mayor, your response. You know, according to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire. So if this is important. This is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass.
For more, I want to bring in CBS News contributors Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright. Leslie's a Republican strategist. Antjuan is a Democratic strategist. So, Antjuan, I mean, it was no surprise people will be going after Buttigieg in this. What did you make of last night?
I thought last night did not change the conversation much in terms of who the front runners are and where their positions are in the front runner lanes. I think Biden did a great job of maintaining his overall front runner status. I think Elizabeth Warren felt like she came into this debate with the most to prove because she arguably has slipped away in the polls in many polls that have come about. Bernie Sanders, I think, maintained his strong second position behind Joe Biden in this race. And I thought Mayor Pete was trying to figure out where does he belong in terms of fitting in between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren while trying to have the pragmatic voice be a stumbling block in between those two.
So, Leslie, you know, we saw that clip with Elizabeth Warren talking, Buttigieg talking also about the high-stakes fundraising, big dollars, and the need for transparency is what Warren was pushing for. What did you make of that?
Well, the Democrats have been writing, especially since 2016, on the idea of, getting big money out of politics. Where's the influence and those dollars? And they traditionally attack Republicans for having these high dollar, when we know the truth is it's on both sides, but having these billionaire friends and, tech giants and such, hosting and supporting the Republican Party or the Koch brothers or whatever they may be. This is an instance where it really does add that cross pressure of how do you raise money as a candidate, especially when you think of the high net worth people that were on that stage. So Buttigieg had a point, but it's the dichotomy of both. You have to be able to raise money to be relevant. Do you disclose that? And what's the threshold in terms of where the Democratic Party wants to be?
Part of my big frustration, and we talked about this before, my big frustration is we brand ourselves as the big tent party, but yet we put limitations or restrictions on ourselves. I don't care if someone has earned their money the right way and may have more resources than someone else and they want to give me money. I could give two flying kites about that. What I want to do is make sure we have the resources we need to compete with the other side, because the other side, let's decide, they're not turning away money from people who have been successful in business, et cetera. And I think we have to get away from trying to be cute and thinking that's going to somehow or another change the minds of people we need to vote for us.
Speaking of narrowing down this poll, Senator Klobuchar had some interesting moments, especially sparring with Pete Buttigieg last night, leading many people to say she was the standout from last night. Here's some of that exchange.
And I see what I've done, which is to negotiate 3 farm bills and be someone that actually had major provisions put in those bills. So while you can dismiss committee hearings, I think this experience works. And I have not denigrated your experience as a local official. I have been one. I just think you should respect our experience when you look at how you evaluate someone who can get things done.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance to respond.
You actually did denigrate my experience, Senator, and it was before the break, and I was going to let it go because we got bigger fish to fry here. But you implied
I don't think we have bigger fish to fry than picking a president of the United States.
So Klobuchar there pushing back. She's been struggling in the polls, if we're being honest here. Does this help her? Does a moment like that really help?
She raised $500,000 online between today and last night.
Wow.
She had a hell of a night. I thought that next to Biden, she definitely had the strongest night in the debate. And I think she needed to have a standout knockout moment. She was able to hold the mayor accountable as well as advocate for some of her some of her positions as a pragmatic, and I applaud her for that. And then she spoke to what she said before, is that a lot of people feel like Mayor Pete, as a small town mayor, has came to his place in this race and is in a place of privilege, has not had the set of experiences or the miles on the engine as some of the others, but he's treated differently in the media, and I think she articulated that in her own way last night.
You know, President Trump's campaign secretary weighed in and had this to say, saying it's even more clear why they felt that they had to impeach President Trump. None of these characters has a chance. So is that the messaging? You know, it is a bit of an Achilles heel for Democrats. Like, do we have an excitable candidate who's going to mobilize people to come out? Is this something the Republican Party feels they can capitalize on?
Absolutely. I mean, the Democrats have to decide. They have to have their kind of conflict of conscience of which direction they're going to be in. They're going to advocate that they have small donors, you know, and they're going to use that as their talking point. Or are they going to go with these billion-dollar fundraisers? Republicans on their side, the president's going to be running on the economy. He's certainly going to keep talking about impeachment because it is an issue that activates the base. But when you look up there, this is not about a policy race like we had traditionally. This is about a leadership style that people are responding to, that this base of 63 million that came out to support the president, and in many ways, more people are emboldened to support the president because they feel the system's unfair. You're going to need somebody to juxtapose that in terms of contender that matches that style. I don't know that you've seen that yet, but I do like Amy Klobuchar because she's strong. She's like the boss lady on that stage, you know, and she has the chops to prove it, the political ones, the legislative ones, and she can raise money. And those are all the thresholds. So she's the dark horse that I keep watching because Minnesota's the state the president almost won by 2 points. She understands that area. She can speak to that area. She may not be that one at the top of the ticket, but she's certainly inching there, and the one they should be looking at over the one where all the media attention is like at Beto O'Rourke 2.0 with Mayor Pete. It's that kind of that type of candidate who galvanizes, but there's not a strong enough base to move them through a national election.
Speaking of the base, going into this, there was a lot of criticism about diversity. The fact the only person of color was actually Andrew Yang on the stage last night. And here's how Yang addressed it.
And the question is, why am I the lone candidate of color on this stage? Fewer than 5% of Americans donate to political campaigns. You know what you need to donate to political campaigns? Disposable income.
So, Antjuan, you know, for so long, Democrats have said, you know, Republicans can't get it together when it comes to diversity. But is this an issue for Democrats?
I probably tend to differ with other people in the party about this. Look, you won't find a more strong advocate for the most loyal voting bloc in this party, African-American voters, than Antjuan Seawright. I know the work I've put in and people who look like me have put in to make sure we win elections up and down the ballot. But I also know is that what voters have said in this election, you do not have to look like me to advocate for my position. That's why you have not seen any noticeable cracks in the political concrete, African-American voters with Joe Biden support. And I think the people who are frustrated by not making the debate stage or not being in the race to this point because they have not received the necessary support, I think they underestimate the depth and the width of Joe Biden's support among African-American voters, particularly seasoned African-American voters. And that's not a flaw of the party. That's not necessarily a flaw of the process. And no disrespect to the former mayor of San Antonio, but he's bashing Iowa and New Hampshire, but those states have been in the first two for a very long time. Focus your attention on South Carolina. That's a strategy flaw, not necessarily a flaw of the system.
You know, something else that Yang said last night that resonated with some people, he said, stop being obsessed with impeachment. Do you think that could be an Achilles heel for Democrats, the fact that they appear to be so obsessed with impeachment?
Oh, they wanted impeachment. They got impeachment. It was a very unfair process with impeachment. It's not over when you think about the Senate. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the Senate calendar moves right in, backs up right against these Iowa caucuses and New Hampshire caucuses. It's a political backdrop, whether we like it or not. It does have an effect. But Andrew Yang is exactly right. People want to hear what the alternative choice is. And I think with minority voters, it's not this issue of hope. You're not hearing that hope and inspiration like what you did with Barack Obama. That's like we're sending to something. You're hearing like we have to stop something when they're messaging about Donald Trump. And that's a very difficult challenge to get people to go out and vote for that.
Oh, I think Leslie's spot on. This is not a historical field election. This is more about this is live or die election for some people. I wrote this in an op-ed piece for Real Clear Politics a couple weeks ago. For some people, elections are a choice. For others, they are an urgency. For voters who look like me, this election is an urgency because we know what the next 4 years under Donald Trump's style of leadership would mean for communities that look like mine. That's why this is a no game, no shame election for us to go all out.
If we have time, and one of the big issues that came up was immigration as it related to health care. Mayor Pete is sitting there talking about, the sensitivity, don't dehumanize people when we're talking about the undocumented that come across the border. I think there's collective agreement on that. But when he went a step further, and this is where the Democrats continue to go, it sounds like open borders. It sounds like free education. Everybody gets a cookie, and let's give them health care as well. That's what Republicans say. Wait a minute. You have 4.3 million children that do not have health care right now, and you're talking about giving blanket health care to undocumented immigrants. Make choices in this country. And Republicans say it's going to raise taxes. Everybody, the middle class is going to be affected. That's where
an issue that affects so many Americans. We've got to leave it there. I apologize. I want to thank you both. I know.
No, we won't go.
You're welcome to stay. I also have Christmas cookies for you if you stick around. Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright, thank you both very much for joining us.